there's this thing about Murray Rothbard. His critics say that he was nasty to them and he broke with them. My understanding is that he just wrote articles criticizing them, like, say, Larry White and George Selgin wrote on free banking. And Murray wrote an article, a blistering article, saying why they were totally wrong, which I regard as eminently reasonable. And then they wouldn't speak to him.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the Party Pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 336. I'm talking to Walter Block, who has been an economist, a scholar for many years. He's one of the few people out there who can, I think, claims both Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard as influences in his life. And we're going to talk about Rand and Rothbard because he was actually there. He's done a lot of good work, and he's also helped a lot of younger people get started on their lives too. He's been involved with, I think, every organization and just about everywhere. How are you, Dr. Block?
Walter.
Yeah, Walter Block, yes.
I'm fine. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you for coming on. I always just like to start. How did you become a libertarian?
Well, Jerry Tuccioli, once a buddy of mine, also wrote a book. It all begins with Ayn Rand, and that is absolutely true for me. I was born in Brooklyn. I'm Jewish. Everybody there through osmosis is a lefty, and I was a lefty. I was sort of like Bernie Sanders. He and I were on the track team together at Madison High School, and my views were just the same as his, give or take. And then Ayn Rand came to speak at Brooklyn College. And I was bitterly opposed to her because she favored free enterprise. And everyone knows that free enterprise is sort of like fascism, and it's evil. And at the end of the lecture she gave, there was an announcement made that the Ayn Rand Studies Club, or whatever they called it, that had invited her to Brooklyn College, was having a lunch in her honor. And anyone could come. And I wanted to come and convert her to socialism, because socialism was the way to go. And there was this long, long table, and then maybe 50 people on each side, and she was sitting at the head of it. And her lieutenants, Alan Greenspan, Nathaniel Branden, Leonard Peacock, were all sitting near her. And the only empty seats were way at the other end of the table. And I turned to my neighbor and I said, well, socialism is the way to go. Capitalism is evil. And the guy said, well, I don't really know that much about it, but the people who do are at the other end of the table. And I went there. I was a chutzpahnik, pushy. And I stuck my head in between Ayn's and Nathan's. And I said, there's a socialist who is here, wants to debate someone on socialism and capitalism. They said, who is that? I said, me. And I was, 20 years old. Brandon maybe 35. Rand maybe 50 years old. This was in 1963. And Brandon was very, very nice. He could have said, go away, you idiot. But he was very nice. He said, look, there's no room at this end of the table. However, I'll come and sit at the other end and talk to you on two conditions. One, you read Atlas Shrugged and Economics in one lesson by Henry Hazlitt. And two, you promise to not let this conversation lapse after one shot, but we continue until we settle it. And I agreed. And we talked for an hour during lunch. And then I read Atlas Shrugged over the weekend, and I couldn't put it down. I mean, I think I read the whole thing in one weekend, and it's 1,200 pages. And I read Hazlitt, and boy, oh boy, was I converted. I mean, in my education, nobody had ever sent anything like that around. And I took economics and philosophy, but I was unacquainted with that. And I came to Ayn's house and Nathaniel's house, and we talked about it with my two roommates, Ben Klein and Mel Fine. And then I was converted. I was minimal government libertarian, minarchist, like Ayn Rand, like Ludwig von Mises, who she was a big fan of and recommended his books, and I started reading them. And I was a limited government libertarian, armies, courts, police, and that's about it for government. Very, very limited government. And I would go to the NBI, the Nathaniel Branden Institute lectures, and, I was part of the crowd.
That's pretty well. I got to ask, did you sense that anything was going on between them at the time when you saw them sitting together? Or,
I was oblivious to that sort of a thing, and I'm not very good at that at any time, and probably they weren't then, but what do I know about that? I just don't know.
what was the culture like at NBI? These were in the basement of the Empire State Building. How many people were there usually?
Oh, 2, 3, 4, 500 maybe?
Oh wow.
It was a very bad culture. If you asked Ayn Rand something like, "Well, on Atlas Shrugged on page 42, you said this. Could you expound on that?" That would be a perfectly good question, and everything would be hunky dory. But if you said, "On page 42, you said this, but on page 700, you said that," or Hazlitt said that, or Mises said that, and it's incompatible with what you said, you know what she would say?
What?
She would say, "Get out." I mean, I mean, I'm not kidding. This was serious. She would say, "Get out." Whereas when I went to her house in person with Brandon, they were much nicer. They would argue with me and tolerate my ignorance, and I got converted. But in public, she was vicious, and I would leave in a huff. But then again, they were the only free enterprise people I knew. So I was sort of like schizophrenic approach avoidance. So I'd leave for 6 months, and then I'd come back and then get disgusted and then come back. The next stage in my development was, I was now at Columbia getting my PhD, and Larry Moss was a, student, with me, and he said, "You must meet."
VOSS?
I'm sorry?
Is that spelled VOSS?
Moss, M-O-S-S,
Oh, Moss. Okay, MOSS. Okay, sorry. Just wanted to
Larry
clarify that.
Moss. He
Yeah.
was a fellow student of mine. He said, "You must meet Murray Rothbard. He's an anarchist." I said, "Anarchist? I don't wanna meet any anarchists. They're all crazy. No government? Come on, give me a break." And I resisted meeting Murray Rothbard because he was a crazy anarchist. And then he and his roommate, Jerry Wallows, Wolloz, Wallows, both of them unhappily have passed away. But they were my boyhood friends, and they ganged up on me and they made me meet Murray Rothbard. I met Murray. And Murray, I guess, was the second in time or third after Rand and Branden, who developed me as a philosopher, economist, whatever I am now. And in about 10 minutes, he converted me to anarchism. It was amazing. Um, he said, "Look, you realize why we have to privatize the post office, right?" Right. Yeah, sure. I read Hazlitt. I knew that. He said, "Well, why can't we privatize the police? Why can't we privatize courts?" And he started talking about American Arbitration Association. Why can't we privatize this, that, and the other? And the light bulb went on over my head, and I was converted. I was now an anarcho-libertarian. Limited, not limited government, but no government at all, because government is, for say, a rights violator, because they tax you and they demand that you adhere to their monopolistic services. So I was an anarcho-capitalist. The Austrianism came um, a lot later. I couldn't get my mitts around praxeology for the longest time, but I got an excuse. Hayek was also not a praxeologist. He was an Austrian, but not a praxeologist. And now I was a student of Gary Becker, a Nobel Prize winner at Columbia. He was my
Yes.
dissertation advisor. And it took me a long time to get the idea that there could be a sentence that was absolutely true and not a tautology. I mean, a tautology, all bachelors are unmarried men. Okay, yeah, you don't go out and test. Yeah, I don't go ask you, Chris, are you married? Are you a bachelor? I mean, if you're married, you're not a bachelor. So it's a tautology. On the other hand, whether it's raining outside or not, you just have to look outside, and that's an empirical claim, but it's not necessarily true that it's raining. Not always raining. But could there be such a thing as a synthetic a priori, namely something absolutely necessarily true and not a tautology? And I couldn't get my mind wrapped around that for the longest time, but finally I got it. And there are statements that man acts. I mean, if you try to deny that, you're acting, or that the minimum wage law will necessarily create unemployment in equilibrium for all people whose productivity is lower than the wage stipulated by the minimum wage law. Those are synthetic a prioris. and I was trying to convert Gary Becker to Austrianism, and I failed. I was doing my dissertation on rent control, and my thesis, you'll be shocked, rent control screws up housing. And most of the I was doing econometric empirical stuff, and most of the time I got the right sign for my independent variable, namely rent control was in effect. And usually I got statistically significant, but every once in a while, horrors, I got the wrong sign, and sometimes even more horrors, it was significant. And I'd go to Gary Becker and he'd say, Glock, go out and do it again until you get it right. So what was testing what? My crappy econometrics or the axiological insight that rent control, other things equal, ceteris paribus, screws up housing. So I was trying to convert him to this insight, but I never succeeded.
Yeah, I've only heard this, since I wasn't alive then, but I've heard the atmosphere at the Nathaniel Branden Institute was about half and half, and I mean half men and half women. Is that true?
I wouldn't say half and half. I wasn't really aware of it. I would probably say 60-40, more men,
Okay.
maybe 65-35. I'm not sure. I really wasn't as aware of that, nor was I aware of the relationship between Rand and Brandon. I would say more men than women are libertarians now, have always been.
And definitely the case now, but I mean, yeah, but I mean then, yeah.
I think even then more. I wouldn't say 90-10 or 95-5, but more men than women, but there were women, and some of them are just the girlfriends or the wives of guys who are into it. So my wife is not a libertarian
Yeah.
anymore. Uh,
Oh,
so
yeah.
if we go to a function, she can't count as a
Yeah.
libertarian.
That's true. I've also heard too, though, that, Nathaniel was doing the lecturing and Ayn was doing the writing, doing some lecturing, and that Barbara really was the one who all the business work. Is that true?
I was never part of the senior collective,
Okay. Yeah.
so I don't know. Barbara was certainly there,
Yeah.
but I don't know who did what behind the scenes.
But I mean, all the work that isn't so romantic, going to the post office, paying the bills, picking up the mail, opening the mail, all that kind of stuff. I mean,
No,
okay.
I'm sorry. I wasn't privy to that sort of stuff.
Yeah, who else was giving any lectures there?
Well, Leonard Peikoff would be. He was part of the senior collective, and certainly Barbara Brandon. Mainly Ayn and Nathaniel were the lecturers there. But as I said, the culture there was not scholarly. Scholarly means, we disagree, we discuss it, we argue, we
Yeah.
debate, whatever, we do it politely. And that's the way I got converted by them. He was very nice, and she was very nice initially. But in public, they did not tolerate any deviations. It was very unfortunate.
Did you ever encounter Robert Stadler Greenspan there, or it's Ms. Alan Greenspan?
Alan Greenspan was part of that, and Henry Hazlitt was part of that. Yeah, there were others. They had more of a minor role. Franklin and Rand were the key speakers, but there were guest lecturers or other people like that.
There
No.
aren't that many people in that circle who are still alive. Did you ever get a chance to meet Ludwig von Mises?
Yes, yes,
Tell
yes.
us about that. I think you're the first person I've had on here who got to meet Mises. So
Not only did I meet Mises, but I actually shook his hand, and I never washed it since. So if you shake my hand, you channel Mises. See, there are other people that shook Mises' hand that are still alive, but they've washed their hands. I never washed it.
yeah,
What happened was there was Murray's living room crowd. Murray, Leonard Gitchell, Joe Peden, Ron Hamway, Ralph Rako, Walter Grinder, Larry Moss, Jerry Wallows were all part of Murray's living room crowd, and I was honored to be part of that as well. And Ludwig von Mises had a horrible um, career. He came over to the US, I guess, in 1940 or somewhere in there, and you'd think Harvard or Princeton or Yale or Columbia or somebody would wanna grab him up and make him a professor. No. not even NYU, although he had a lecture at NYU, but it wasn't paid for by NYU. It was paid for by, I forget the name of the businessmen who were his supporters. And he gave a lecture, not to classroom, not to students. NYU students could come, but there were very few NYU students there. But Murray went, and Hazlitt went, and other people like that went. And the last lecture that he was giving there, Murray grabbed up his whole living room crowd, and we all went there. And Mises was very elderly. He was not a good speaker. He could hardly hear you. Percy Graves would sort of be his translator. Percy was a strong guy with a big voice, and you'd ask Mises a question, and he'd scream it into Mises' ear, and then he'd translate back. So it was sort of getting Mises at the end of his career, but it was still an honor. I mean, I read that Human Action and all of his books, so it was a big honor to be there. And I actually did shake his hand, and as I say, I never washed it. Silly here, of course. But I guess the most prominent person beside Murray, who was a regular attendee, was Israel Kirzner, another famous economist, and he was part of that. And I think Mises did was a mentor of one or two other people who got their PhDs at NYU. So he had some sort of relationship. It was sort of similar to the relationship that Hayek later had with the University of Chicago. Hayek was proposed as a member of the University of Chicago economics department, and Stigler and Friedman blackballed him because he was not an economist. Namely, he wasn't empirically oriented. He was an Austrian. And they made a special place for him called Social Thought, something like that. The Division of Social Thought, I think that was it. And he became a professor, but to show the divergence between Austrian economics and mainstream empirical economics, they didn't even allow him to be a member of the economics department. Now, it's true he hadn't won the Nobel Prize in economics yet, but still, if you're going to win the Nobel Prize in economics in 5 or 10 years, you're an economist, for goodness sakes. And or at least you're an expert in that. There are people like Elinor Ostrom who won it, and several others who won Nobel Prize in economics who were not really economists, but they did enough in economics to deserve that, presumably.
Well, Rothbard called his group the Circle Bastiat, if my memory's right. Yeah, and I know of I think the only one left from there. George Reisman is still alive. Kirzner's still alive too. So, I've been saying, I of all the speeches by Javier Milei I've listened to, he probably mentions Kirzner as much as anybody. I'd love to say to him, Javier, he's still alive. Go meet him.
Well, it's an interesting story on Kirzner and Reisman.
Yeah.
Reisman wrote a gigantic book, probably as big as
Capitalism.
Or Capitalism.
Yes.
And Kirzner wrote a blistering attack on it.
Oh, wow.
And I spoke to Reisman about it. I said, look, you should write a reply, but he never did. I agreed with Kirzner's critique of Reisman. I thought what Reisman was Reisman is like a guy in the circus who stands on two horses and tries to ride two horses, and then when the horses diverge, he's in trouble. Well, Reisman was trying to reconcile Ayn Rand's objectivism with the subjectivism of Austrian economics, and it can't be done. But he tried, and Kirzner, I think, criticized him heavily. Also, Reisman and Rothbard had a divergence. To give you an insight into Ayn Rand, when Ayn Rand and Murray was once part of the Ayn Rand group.
Yes.
And Ayn Rand is a devoted or outspoken atheist, as is Murray. But Murray's wife, Joey, was a believer, a Christian. And you know what Ayn Rand said to him? He said, you must divorce her. But she was very generous. She gave him a whole year. No, she didn't say you must divorce her. She said you must divorce her unless she converts to atheism.
Yeah.
And she was very generous. She gave Murray a whole year to convert Joey into atheism. And Murray said, this is Meshuggah. This is crazy. And so this gives you another insight into Ayn Rand's psychology or sociology or culture. I mean, imagine telling a follower of yours, and Murray was sort of a follower of Ayn Rand. He was way older than him. He was very taken with Atlas Shrugged. Imagine telling a colleague or a student or an employee that you must divorce your wife unless your wife converts to your views. That is sort of crazy on stilts. So it gives you an indication. Well, Murray and Reisman broke up because he sort of went to the Ayn Rand group, and Ayn Rand forbade him to see Murray. That's another thing, if you and I are friends and somehow we're no longer friends, and we're still friends, but I'm not friends with Joe Blow, and I tell you that unless you drop Joe Blow, I'm dropping you. Well, this is sort of also good.
Yeah, although I've heard it, he was supposed to give her some books and then divorce her, but yeah, that's it's quite unfortunate. Walter, I honestly believe that if it had not been for the breakup with Branden and some of this kind of stuff, Ayn Rand might very well have changed the world. And now I don't know where her movement's going to go.
Well, I think, I sometimes ask myself, who has been the most successful in converting more people to libertarianism than anyone else?
Yeah.
And my answer is Ayn Rand from my generation and Ron Paul for the next generation. Now, look, Murray and Mises were, in some sense, better philosophers, better economists, but they didn't have as big a megaphone as those. I mean, Ron Paul was a doctor. That was his training. And Ayn Rand was a novelist. That was her shtick. So I don't deprecate Mises or Murray. They just didn't have that megaphone. But the two people that succeeded the most in converting more people to libertarianism than anyone else would be Ayn Rand and Ron Paul. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a good prognosticator. I think that economists predict the future to show that we have a sense of humor. But I'm sort of a pessimist in the idea of how many more people will become libertarian. Although an interesting thing, when I met Murray, I asked him, how many libertarians are there in the world? And he said 25. This is in 1964, something like that. Well, how many libertarians are there now in the whole world? I would say 25 million. If you look at everywhere in the whole world, there might be 25 million of us. So we've gone from 25 to 25 million, a gigantic percentage increase. We're doing magnificently. On the other hand, at that time in 1963, there were maybe 3 or 4 billion people on the planet. Now there are 8 billion. So they've only doubled. We've gone, percentage, but we've only added 25 billion minus 25. They've added 4 billion. So I'm not sure if there's going to be much progress or not.
Yeah, you were in Brooklyn. Of course, Chris Matthews Scabar has always lived in Brooklyn too. The great man who wrote Ayn Rand, the Russian Radical. Did you ever make any trips up to Irvington to go to the Foundation for Economic Education?
Absolutely. The Foundation for Economic Education was pretty much the only think tank then in the 60s, early 60s. This is way before Cato or Mises Institute or Reason Foundation or the think tanks or any of the other things that we now have. That was the only place that you could go to. Leonard Reed was the president then, and they were pro-Austrian. They weren't anarchists. They weren't anarchists, classical liberals. But Israel Kurzman was there. By the way, Israel is now, I don't know, 90, 92, something like that.
He's 95.
95.
Yeah, he's born in 1930, yeah.
I didn't realize it was Thomas Sowell, another person who should be in this conversation, is, I think, 92, 93.
Yeah, he's over 90 as well. He still sounds pretty good, yeah. So.
He's pretty good is an underestimate. He's magnificent.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anyway, Israel sort of retired from Austrian economics, and he's now taken up Talmudic studies,
Yeah.
which I'm a little interested in. I've written a little bit about it, comparing the Talmud and libertarianism. But Israel had a magnificent long career of contributing to Austrian economics. I have to tell you a Hayek story. I beat Hayek at chess.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Now, the way I beat people in chess, I say, "Look over there," and then I grab their queen, and then I continue the game. Yeah, I'm kidding. But Hayek, I have an interesting relationship with him. My book, Defending the Undefendable One, I have 3 in the series now. He wrote a blurb for it, where comparing me to Mises, and I was a kid. I was like 32 or something.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And, I thought he was drunk when he wrote that, but I was very grateful to him for that. And also, what I did is I criticized his book. What's his famous book? Ah, I'm getting senile. I can't think of his famous book. Um,
Hayek's Road to Serfdom.
Road System. Thank you.
Yes, 1944.
I'm losing my marbles.
I read that book very early, and that's a good book because it's very easy for the layman to pick it up and just read it.
That,
You
it's
could probably give it to high school students.
no, it was Road to Surfing, a great book, but I thought he gave away too much of the store. What really irked me was he said we shouldn't get rid of rent control, we should phase it out. And, my idea is, if you have the power to get rid of rent control and you don't do it, you're sort of giving it its imprimatur. It's sort of like with slavery. If we have the ability to get rid of slavery, we don't want to get rid of 1/10 of slaves every year for the next 10 years. If we do, we're guilty of supporting slavery for 9 years. So that and a whole bunch of other things where I thought he was a little soft, and I was critical of him. And then I sort of felt guilty because he was so nice to me, and here I am
Yeah.
biting the hand that feeds me, so to speak. But then I realized that he is a mensch. He's not like Ayn Rand. He is a scholar. We had a relationship after that. We were still friendly, and I try to follow that with my own students. If they disagree with me, I try to, not not be vicious, but, try to argue with them or something. And then I got into it with Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman, after blackballing Hayek for the economics department, he wrote me saying that my critique of Hayek was, ridiculous. And I wrote back, and we had a back and forth, me and Milton Friedman, 4 or 5 interchanges. And I was respectful of him. I mean, Milton Friedman is a great man, but he's not an Austrian, and he's not that good of a libertarian. And I think also he was critical of me criticizing Hayek, and so I'm 84. I'll be 84 in about a week. I'm 80 now, and I've been in the movement since 1962 or 3, maybe 1963. So it shouldn't surprise anyone that I've met a whole bunch of people who are very famous, who are my mentors. And certainly Milton Friedman is one of them. Oh, I have to tell you my Thomas Sowell story.
Oh, yeah, you got to meet Soul. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever talked to anybody who met him, but yeah.
I've never met him
Oh, you didn't meet him. Okay.
personally, but I edited a book that he contributed an article to. I met his colleague Walter Williams many a time.
Yeah.
I'm proud to say I'm a co-author with Walter Williams, and I taught his daughter how to swim. One time we were at some conference together, but I never met Thomas Sowell, but I was the editor of a book that he contributed to. And when he sent me his article, he said, "If you change one word, I'm pulling this article out of your compilation." He was accustomed to editors changing what he meant. He didn't realize I was a fan, and I wouldn't do that anyway, even if I weren't a fan. I'm not that kind of an editor. So he sent me the thing, and there were maybe 5 typos that I caught. I was very proud. I caught typos. People in the first draft, there's always a typographical error. And I said, "Look, is it okay if I change this?" And he said, "Okay." And that's my Thomas Sowell story. Other than that, I'm a big admirer of his.
Oh, yeah. And, he and Rothbard, they just were machines at putting out work. I sold all those books and everything. Just they're amazing scholars. Hey, I just finished a Thomas Sowell book. I said, "Oh, well, he's got 2 more now." So, just
No, 20 more, 20 more.
Rothbard just wrote all those articles too. I got to ask too. Did you ever meet Isabel Patterson?
No, I never met her. Uh, I think there were 3 women who were Ayn Rand, Isabel Patterson, and a third one, I
It was
think
Wilder Lane.
that's it. The 3 women who were
Yeah.
our mothers, our aunts, our grandmothers, whatever. I met Ayn Rand, but I never met the other 2, but I'm obviously a fan of, all 3.
Yeah, I just asked. God of the Machine is another one of those really great free market books that I think you should non give it to people. You probably give it to teenagers even. They could read that because it showed all this stuff about what's happened with innovations. Just, and the Fountainhead, the Discovery of Freedom, and God of the Machine were all published in 1943. It's just such a and it's unfortunate that Stephen Cox died too, because I should have brought him on here to talk about Isabel Patterson just because of all the amazing stuff she did. I think she might have been one of the few people who was actually a mentor for Rand, but I don't know. But Rand often claims originality, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. But uh, you
Well,
know,
we all stand on the shoulders of people who came before us. Nobody invented the wheel around here anyway. We
yeah.
all add a little bit like we're doing right now. We're adding a, teeny tiny bit of liberty, and hopefully, this will some young kid, age 14, will see this and maybe be inspired to read, Hazlitt or Rand or Rothbard or somebody like that.
What was Leonard Reed like?
Well, I met Leonard Reed at the end of his career. He was
Yeah.
not he was not as, I don't know what, interested in liberty. Uh, he was telling me of a whole bunch of jokes. He was a very funny guy.
Yeah.
But I mean, he did yeoman work. I mean, he was a voice crying out in the wilderness. Now we've got many think tanks, many institutions. At the time in the 40s, that was it pretty much. So
Oh yeah.
he deserves a gigantic applause. While we're sort of mentioning people, I would have to mention Robert Nozick,
Yeah.
who a famous libertarian, not an anarcho-capitalist, but very, very close. And now we talk about Harvard and Donald Trump trying to kick Harvard butt for anti-Semitism, and also for not having any intellectual diversity. They're all a bunch of pinkos, except for Nozick and 2 or 3 others. Harvard does not pass the Sodom and Gomorrah test. What's the Sodom and Gomorrah test?
Mhm.
God said to the angel, "Got to go kill everyone in Sodom and Gomorrah because they're evil." And the angel said, "Not so fast, God." I'm putting it in my own words. I don't think
Yeah.
it went down that exact way. Said, "Give me a chance. Let me go to Sodom and Gomorrah, and if I can find 10 righteous people, even out of thousands, we'll save Sodom and Gomorrah." So he went to Sodom and Gomorrah. He couldn't find 10. So God had a smite, according to my understanding of the Bible, and I'm no biblical scholar.
Yeah.
What does Harvard pass the Sodom and Gomorrah test? They have, what is it, 3,200 professors? Can you find 10 who are either conservative or libertarian? No. And they have the temerity. I mean, poor Donald is getting in trouble for, denying academic freedom. He's not. What Donald Trump is saying is, look, Sodom and Gomorrah, Harvard, you want to do your Marxist thing, your feminist thing, go do it, but not on our dime. Do it with your own dime. You have plenty of money. So he's not telling Harvard or Columbia not to be anti-Semitic, but not to have only Marxist professors. He's just saying, if you want to do that, God bless. I'm putting words in Donald Trump's mouth now. God bless. Go do your thing, but don't count on public funds. And don't count on a tax exempt status, because that's supposed to be for the public good. And boy, oh boy, you guys are not in the public good. So, I support Donald. I just wrote what was it? A report card on Donald's first 6 months, and I'm a big fan of what he did with Harvard. Okay, so Robert Nozick is an eminent libertarian. No one could deny that. One of my favorite expressions of his that I use over and over and over is capitalist acts between consenting adults. the left is forever saying, "Oh, anything between consenting adults," and what they mean is sex and drugs and pornography and
Yeah.
prostitution. And Nozick is saying, "Well, how about capital sex between consenting adults?" He's trying to embarrass the left, which is easy, but he does it brilliantly here, into realizing that the free enterprise system is just between consenting adults. So how can
Yeah.
you be against that if you're in favor of consensual adult behavior?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I always like to bring up Irvington. I wish I could have all these young libertarians go in a time machine and experience a seminar at the mansion. Can't do it now, obviously, but that was just what an amazing place to just go for a week and listen and have a seminar. I don't think you could ever beat that place.
No, I agree with you. It's part of our history.
That was the first time I went anywhere. I don't know if you ever met any of the people there. There was John Chamberlain, Bettina B. N. Graves, who was Percy's wife, and the great Reverend Ed Opitz, great guy, Hans Sennholz.
Oh, yeah, Bettina, Graves, was sort of Mises' secretary, if I could put it that way, translating him, helping him. I must have, oh, I don't know, 15 or 20 essays on fee. Freeman is the monthly or weekly? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
it was monthly. Yeah, you often had articles in there too, and usually you'd co-author them with a student. You were in there a lot. Yeah,
Yeah, I try to get my students into this by co-authoring stuff with them.
mm,
Uh, and I must have, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 articles over the years in the Freeman, and I'm very proud of that. They're not as radical as Rothbard, but they're very, very Haslittian, economics in one lesson, and
yeah.
they do a magnificent job of converting the heathen to free enterprise. And this is just fee. Now they moved from New York, I think, to Atlanta.
Yeah, they're in Atlanta now. Yeah.
Right.
There's just no need to have a mansion like that anymore, unfortunately.
Well, they had a mansion in, I don't know, 20 acres in a very pricey area of New York State.
Yeah,
And they probably got a lot of money when they sold that. And now they're in Atlanta, but they're doing the same yeoman work in promoting liberty and good economics. So hats off to them.
yeah. They have the magazine. They have the website. I don't know if they're selling books like they used to. I mean, they had a pretty good sized book service, and of course they had to store those books someplace. I remember I was lucky. I got a hardcover copy of The God of the Machine there, which was no longer available, and it was so cool. They'd let us get the books autographed and take them back to our room, and we didn't have to pay for them until Friday. I mean, I got so many autographed books that week. That was and everybody there was just so nice. It was just such a great setting, and of course, they brought in people worldwide because all you have to do, you just go up go up the train to the river, and then get off and walk up the hill, and you'd be at the mansion. But yeah, that was and we didn't have locks on our doors. It was like we were one big family for a week. But uh,
No, that's part of our history and a very positive part of our history. And I'm a big fan of them. I still would write. I think I've got another article forthcoming with them. It'll be out in a week or so. And I'm going to one of these days find out just how many articles I did. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's 50, but maybe that's a high estimate.
oh yeah, you probably had a lot of articles elsewhere. We're all. You mentioned too. I know was you talked about Rothbard and Kirzner. Was that kind of a split? Because there is kind of a split between what I call the NYU Austrians and the Auburn Austrians. NYU, you had Kirzner, you got Peter Betke, Mario Rizzo. I don't know who else. And they're
Julio,
all, yeah,
Julio Driscoll was part of that group. Well, there was some sort of split. I remember Boone Rockwell try to get Israel Kirzner to come and lecture at Auburn, and that never happened. And Israel was critical of them. Uh, you know, there is this thing about Murray Rothbard. His critics say that he was nasty to them and he broke with them. My understanding is that he just wrote articles criticizing them, like, say, Larry White and George Selgin wrote on free banking. And Murray wrote an article, a blistering article, saying why they were totally wrong, which I regard as eminently reasonable. And then they wouldn't speak to him. And Murray also did the same thing for the book that Mario Rizzo and Jerry O'Driscoll did. Murray wrote a critical review of it, and then they stopped talking to him. And I think Israel Kirzner was under the influence of these people, and Israel sort of didn't want to get involved in the Mises Institute. Speaking of the Mises Institute, are you aware of what's going on with me and them?
Yeah, I am unfortunately aware of that. I know because I met you at the 2003 Rothbard graduate seminar. That these things happen. Unfortunately, I didn't really want to talk about that much because it's because you've got a long career and there's just it's
Well, these things are unfortunate, as you say, and if you don't want to talk about it, that's okay.
I've one of the things I've realized from doing this is there's just so many people out there fighting the good fights, and if somebody's fighting 8 out of 10, how do you get them to fight 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10? I don't know. It's yeah, it's there's a lot. Yeah, there's I've been there. I've been to Fee. I've been that was a good week. That was a good week. That was probably felt like it was a little bit over my head. So that's always a. It's not as cheap as it used to be, though.
Well, I think about this over the head business. There's a lot of stuff. Even I, if I can use that expression,
Mhm.
is over my head because economics is a what do they say a many splendored apparatus, and libertarianism and Austrian economics. There's just so much. Not everybody can be expert in everything. We have such a thing called specialization and division of labor. Now, Murray Rothbard broke that because he's an expert in everything, as is my friend David Gordon, who's an expert in everything. But most normal human beings, if I can put it that way, like you and I, we're not experts in everything. We just have to, do the best we can. And I think Murray and David Gordon are just encyclopedic and expert in everything, which is a violation of specialization and division of labor. But those two people are unique, whereas ordinary mortals, I hope you don't mind me including you here, we're not expert in everything. So when we go to a seminar, we learn new things, and that's the human condition.
Something I realized a while back too is one man's blind spot is another man's obvious, and one man's obvious is another man's blind spot.
I think you're right. We have to be
So
modest. Us ordinary mortals have to be modest.
I don't have all. There's a lot of things I don't understand, but it's certainly wild out there. Yeah, it's yeah. I do think sometimes I think sometimes I think we get angry just because we feel like we're arguing the same arguments over and over again.
Well, Hayek once said that each generation of libertarians is
Yeah,
consigned to fighting the same battles. There's just some sort of thing in most people that socialism is great, and that if you're for free enterprise, you're for greed. And one of my favorite movies was, I think, Wall Street, where the guy said, "Greed is good." I think
yeah,
greed is good. If we weren't greedy, if we didn't want more than we have, we'd sit there and twiddle our thumbs, and we wouldn't have much progress, whether in terms of prosperity or learning or anything. So greed, wanting more than you have, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you get it at the point of a gun, okay, bad. But if you get it by inventing a better whistle stick or a better rubber band or something, or a better computer, that's great. Bernie Sanders, my old buddy, um,
classmate. Yes.
we were on the track team together. We were sort of friendly, still not sort of. And what
Yeah.
he used to inveigh against was millionaires and billionaires. And he's changed. He no longer inveighs against millionaires and billionaires. He only inveighs against billionaires. Why? Because he's now a millionaire. Isn't that
You
crazy?
know, this is something I realized during COVID, and I really do. I think a lot of the billionaires do want corporate welfare, but they don't want to take from money from people who have $500 in the bank. They want to take money from somebody who has $1 million in the bank because they got more money.
No, I think there are two kinds of billionaires.
Yeah.
One kind of billionaire who is a mafioso, and he gets the money at the point of a direct gun. Another kind of a billionaire is a mafioso who doesn't use a gun, but he goes through the government and gets money from the government,
Yeah.
corporate capitalism. But those kind of billionaires don't help society. They don't help prosperity. But then there's another kind of a billionaire who invents a better computer or a car instead of a horse and buggy or a new medicine or something like that. And he makes $1 billion. And how does he do it? How did Bill Gates make so much money? He sold the computer for 500. How did I value the computer at 600? Otherwise, I wouldn't have bought it. If I valued it at 400, I would have made 100 loss. If I valued it at 500, even, I wouldn't have bestirred myself off my couch because what was in it for me? I'm greedy. I want to better myself. So I valued it at 600. The way he got rich was by uplifting everyone else. And those billionaires we have to salute. We have to have ticker tape parades for billionaires. Billionaires of the free enterprise variety because they enrich us. We are very rich here because we have more billionaires than in other countries where they don't have any, except Idi Amin is a billionaire, but he got it in
Yeah.
a different way.
I wish a lot more of these really high wealth people in the business world had said something during 2020 about the COVID restrictions, and hardly any of them said anything. Uh,
Well, on COVID, I take a little different kind of a view, and I got in trouble with a lot of libertarians on that. Um, my view on COVID is a little different than most. Most people were saying, um, compelling people to have inoculations by telling them that they can't do this or that without it. I went so far as to call for possibly. I asked myself, would it ever be justified for the government or private defense agency that compel you to have an inoculation? And my answer is yes. I can think of a scenario because look, if you have a horrible disease, and I don't think COVID qualifies, but if you have a horrible disease, when you sneeze, you kill somebody 200 miles away. Well, you're a murderer. So I think that that it's possible. I don't say we should ever do it in reality, but we can concoct a situation where it would be justified to have compulsory vaccinations, let alone vaccinations under the threat that, well, if you don't have a vaccination, then you can't do this or you can't do that. Of course, the way they did it was a little crazy. What they would do is they would what was it? They'd shut down churches, but they would allow all sorts of other
Liquor stores, yeah.
liquor stores to operate. I mean, where do you get that from? So I'm not defending the way the government did it. I'm just saying that communicable diseases, contagious diseases, are a different sort of a thing than ordinary. They're very unusual because under certain circumstances, again, you exhale and you kill people. You're a murderer if you don't get that vaccine, assuming that the vaccine works and the vaccine will
Yeah.
kill it, which we can't assume in the case of COVID. So here you have look, there are divisiveness among libertarians. One of them is COVID, which I just discussed. Another is abortion. Look, Ron Paul was pro-life. Murray Rothbard was pro-choice. You can't get too far apart than pro-choice and pro-life. And yet Murray Rothbard and Ron Paul are leaders of our movement. And yet there are people that disagree on immigration. There are some libertarians who are open border. And there are other libertarians who are not open borders. So they want to have controlled in migration. So libertarianism deals with very complicated issues.
Yeah.
Israel is another one. There are some who are pro-Israel, some are not pro-Israel. So there are divisivenesses, divisions among libertarians, and I think the best way to deal with that is dialogue, discussion, debate, argument.
Sometimes I worry that we've forgotten how to debate things. But as I was saying earlier too, that sometimes you just get tired of these debates. I mean, one debate that comes to my mind, I don't ever wanna talk to any of the libertarians who want to replace the income tax with a national sales tax. I'm just tired. I'm just thinking, "Oh, please just go away." You know, it I know that's one, it probably would be better, but as I've said many times, I think the problem is we might end up stuck with both. And But, one COVID analogy I like to use is, let's say, I'm moving from Austin to San Antonio, which is about 80 miles, and I get my moving van, and I'm loading up my moving van, and as I load my moving van up, a rabid squirrel somehow gets inside there, and then I drive down to San Antonio, and then I open it up, and, the rabid squirrel gets out, and then just and I transported that squirrel without even knowing, so then it goes and bites somebody in San Antonio. I mean, am I responsible for that? And I did have rabies shots as a child, so this is a little bit personal for me.
Look, another issue is statutory rape age. We know that if you go to bed with a 5-year-old girl, even
Yes.
if she agrees, you're a statutory rapist because we don't think 5-year-old girls can make any such decisions. On the other hand, you go to bed with a 25-year-old woman and she agrees. And whatever you are, you're not a statutory rapist because we, society, think that 25-year-old women are perfectly capable of deciding such things. Well, where do you draw the line?
Yeah, where do you draw the line? Yeah.
Should it be 16, 18, 17, 15? And now you have problems that the 16-year-old girl might be more mature than the 17-year-old girl. So where do you draw the line? Well, there's no answer from libertarian. You can't deduce statutory rape age from the non-aggression principle and private property rights, which are the foundations of libertarianism. So we have to get used to the fact that libertarianism can't answer all such questions. I mean, look, in some countries, 13 is the cutoff point, or puberty, or something like that. I think that's way too low, but some countries do that.
Yeah.
Uh, so I know that 5 and 25 are crazy. I think 17, 18 is reasonable, and you might think 18, 19 is reasonable. I don't know, but we can't answer every question definitively deduced from libertarian principle.
And if you have a situation where the two people are 6 months apart, that kind of thing,
It's a little different when a 17-year-old boy goes out with a 16-year-old girl rather than a 16-year-old girl and a 45-year-old
yeah.
guy. Very different. So that too brings in more complication.
Yeah, there's a lot of complications. I mean, and I think a lot of people, especially on issues like immigration, that when you ask them what their when they get down to the big details, the deep the details, you'll hear a lot of different responses. I don't know where we figure this out sometimes. That there's a lot of hard questions to be asked.
Well, my answer to that one is what I do is I posit, and I have a book on that. I forget what books I've got. Um, Suppose a Martian comes down and he lands in the middle of Wyoming in the Rocky Mountains, and he
Yeah.
starts homesteading, and he homesteads virgin territory, never been touched by human beings. And he cuts down a tree, clears a rock, puts in a corn plant, whatever. And now an ice guy comes up to him and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he says, "Oh, I'm just homesteading land." And the ice guy says, "Sorry, you can't come here." And then the Martian says, "Well, what libertarian rule have I violated?" And the answer is none. So the
Mm.
proper libertarian view, in my view, and this is a very controversial issue, is open borders. But the problem with open borders is twofold. One, some of them are murderers and rapists, and we don't want them. And look, if there are a quadrillion people from Mars that want to come, too many people. We can't tolerate that many people. So how do we have our cake and eat it?
Yeah.
Adhere to libertarian theory and also keep ourselves safe, because libertarianism is not a suicide pact. And here's the answer. We privatize every square inch of the country. And I have 4 books out on privatization. One
Mm.
is, what is it? Privatize everything. Another is privatize roads and highways. Another is privatize water, lakes, and another is privatize space. How will this help? Well, we now privatize everything in the country, every square inch. No more public roads, no more public anything. The lakes and the Mississippi River are private. And now, if you invite a rapist, we're going to hold you responsible for what he does. And now we can have our cake and eat it. We can say, if you invite somebody in and you're responsible for them, like for that raccoon that you brought to from one city to the other city,
Yes.
you're responsible for that. There's a tort. against you. Well, now I think we've solved the problem. We can have our cake and eat it. Whereas I think too many libertarians want to jettison libertarian theory in order to keep us safe. And I want to keep us safe by not jettisoning libertarian theory, but just privatize every square inch so that nobody can come in here unless they're invited.
Yeah, that's one way to do it, and, you also run into a situation where my tree gets too big, and then it's hanging over my neighbor's property and stuff like that. You see a lot of these things play out in small situations. So
Well, there is it's called the ad colon doctrine. What's the ad colon doctrine? The ad colon doctrine is if you own a square mile, you now own to the core of the earth and up into the heavens, right? And
Okay.
the ad colon doctrine is incompatible with libertarianism. Because the libertarian view is you only own what you homestead. We're John Lockeans in that sense. Look, if the ad colon doctrine were correct, there could be no air flight because you're going over someone's property. Nor could there be such a thing called slant drilling. What's slant drilling? You and I are neighbors,
Oh, you dig a hole, yeah, but you
and and then I go under you and I get the
Mhm.
gold or copper or whatever it is. And you can't object because I'm not caving in your buildings. I'm not interfering with your trees or your plants. I'm going, a mile down where you've not homesteaded.
Mhm.
So the idea is if my tree now blocks your view, there are no rights to a view. Because if there are rights to a view, I don't like the way you look, and therefore you have to change the way you look. I don't like your shirt. Your shirt is no good, and I have a right to a view. So there are no rights to views. And now my tree goes 40 feet above your house, and it blocks the sun a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Well, too bad on you because you don't own that because we don't believe in ad colon. Let me just solve one more issue while I'm at abuse. We've only got a few more minutes. I promised
Yeah.
you. I did mention the pro-life versus pro-choice.
Yep.
My view on that is that both are wrong, and that the only proper view is evictionism.
Mhm.
Namely, you can evict somebody, but you can't kill somebody. And life starts with the fertilized egg, not with birth. Birth is just a slight
Mhm.
change, just from inside a woman's body to outside a woman's body. Life starts with the fertilized egg. But the fertilized egg can be a trespasser. Take the case of rape. This 12-year-old girl is walking down the street. She gets grabbed. She gets raped. She gets impregnated. And now there's a person growing inside of her. That person is a trespasser. What do you have a right to kill an innocent trespasser, but a trespasser? You have a right to kill innocent trespassers? No. Do you have a right to evict them? Yes. So it's sort of a compromise position because in the first two trimesters, it's sort of like pro choice. You can get rid of the trespasser. But in the last trimester, it's more like pro life. You can evict, but you can't kill.
Mhm.
Whereas the feminists say, well, you have a right to kill a fetus. A fetus just a blob of cells. So I think I've solved every problem.
When you're talking about slant drilling, I thought of the issue of mine subsidence. When people have a home, this has happened. People have a home and there were coal mines underneath them, and the ground starts to shift, and the foundation of their house is destroyed. And sometimes it does destroy the houses, but yeah.
Well, this bit was slant drilling. New York City is built on a solid rock. So I
Mhm.
can go into your house and not cave in your
Yep.
building. On the other hand, New Orleans, where I'm a professor, is built on a swamp. So if
Yep.
I want to go under you, I've got to go way, way down so that I don't cave in your buildings or your property.
Yes.
So I think with that proviso, that you don't own stuff down there that you haven't homesteaded. So the ad colon doctrine is wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of complex issues. Well, you said you didn't have any where you said you only had about an hour. Where can we find you out there?
Well, I have a Substack, Walter Block Substack. I'm a professor of economics at Loyola University, New Orleans. I'm always looking for good students. So if you're a high school kid or you're the grandfather of a high school kid or even a college kid who wants to transfer to study with a professor like me who is a libertarian and a
Yeah.
Austrian humanist, and there are very few of us out there. So consider Loyola University, New Orleans for your for yourself, if you're a high school or a college student, or if you have children or grandchildren who are of college age, please do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Walter Block. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, check out my Substack, go buy my novel, Escape from the Village. And there, people are giving me money at buymeacoffee.com. I'm Chris Baker. We're out. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Sounds like your phone rang. Yeah. Well, buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.